So we got some crazy new cards, datamined, coming in the August 2023 season. So these are still a little ways off, but I think they could be pretty crazy. I think destroy and discard are two archetypes that have a lot of exciting stuff on the way. So let's talk about some of these datamined cards. As always, these are not final. We see surprising changes at the last minute for various cards, sometimes even after the like final official reveal video, as we saw with like High Evolutionary going from 4/7 to 4/4. So these may not be the exact final versions of cards, but should be, I think, generally directionally correct. You know, they should have probably this effect and probably close to these stats in one way or another, but might change here and there. So first off here is Daken. I don't know this dude or how to say his name. Daken, and I think he's like Wolverine's kid or something. He's got the Wolverine claws. He's got one on the inside, like Spider-Man's web coming out, but it's a claw. He's a 3/4, and he has on reveal add the Muramasa Shard to your hand. The Muramasa Shard is this crazy sword above my head that reads, when this is discarded or destroyed, double Daken's power. So honestly, that alone makes this a 3/8 without any outside intervention, which a 3/8 is actually nuts. That's really good. That's a super high powered 3 cost card. So if you have any ability to discard or destroy this thing with any degree of reliability, that's insane. Discards in particular, you know, if you follow this up with a MODOK, you don't even have to spend the additional energy on the shard. MODOK will just discard it, and it's truly a 3/8. Sometimes, of course, you'll have to spend the energy on the shard, and that'll kind of be effectively like a 4/8 stat line for Daken. But obviously, if you're spending the energy on the shard, you're getting in other powers. That's kind of like a 4/9, but also you're feeding presumably destroy effects. So you're making your Carnage bigger, your Venom bigger, etc., to proc other benefits on top of the doubling, which is clearly insane. Now, beyond that, obviously, because this is a doubling effect, anytime you have something that scales up the stats on top of that, if you play like, I don't know, a Silver Surfer first or something and push this to 3/6, then he doubles to 3/12, which is insane. You could have like Forges and Nakias and Okoyes and hand buff stuff to make this guy even bigger. Potentially he could like solo an entire location if you support him. I don't think that's really how this will be utilized. That feels a little too sneaky to me, trying to do too many things. I think ultimately the base effect is going to be good enough and strong enough for decks that have discard and destroy effects like this. So you've got fuel for your destroy effects, fuel for your discard effects, because like the more stuff you discard, the bigger your Morbius gets, etc. The more things you destroy, the bigger your Carnage gets. So this is a nice sort of synergy and support piece for other cards, and then also has the big payoff in and of itself with Daken. So in other words, I think this looks really good. Seems quite intriguing. Yeah, you could do Moon Girl stuff as well. So double up the shards with Moon Girl and then discard even more with MODOK. There could be some like insane curve that's like Morbius, Daken, Moon Girl, MODOK. Now, I guess the shard will go to the right side of your hand, so you'd have to dump your hands pretty effectively prior to the Moon Girl in order to actually copy the shard. You might have to hit the perfect 1, 2, 3, 4 just based on Moon Girl's copying and your draw sequencing. So that might actually be pretty hard to pull off regularly, but again, I don't think you need it. I don't think you need crazy support to make this good. I think at a base level, it's good. Any extra upside you get from like a Silver Surfer deck or whatever is probably all just bonus. So really, I think a pretty intriguing card. I think we probably see this in a couple different decks. Discard, destroy, maybe like 3-drop stuff. There's a few angles to approach for Daken. I think it's a cool design too. I like that generating tokens. I don't know the lore or the story or whatever. Yeah, true. You could also copy the Dakens, kind of like we do with Thor nowadays, like multiple Mjolnirs sometimes, right? You can get multiple shards. Might be a little harder to work with because the shard needs additional help, but yeah. It is actually a lot like Thor, honestly, if you think about this card. It's Thor that requires, well, Thor you have to draw the shard, which can hurt sometimes because it's opportunity cost. You're not drawing another thing. This gets added to hand, which makes it more consistent in that way, but also requires a little additional input to do something to the shard, right? It's not just played for free. So I don't know. I think it looks good though. Pretty cool. Auto included in any deck with Nova Killmonger. Yeah, that's true. Actually, pretty good fit for like a Sarah deck. Something you can play down early in Sarah and then Killmonger later. That's pretty nice. Even if your Nova goes off first, then that's putting this to 5, and then the shard gets destroyed, pushing it to 10. So a 3/10 for a Sarah deck with Killmonger is pretty insane. Colleen could isolate the shard specifically. Yep. There's, like I said, just it seems like a really good linchpin card that can be approached from a variety of ways, but works really well in each of them. You know, it just fits into a lot of different puzzles there. It's a puzzle piece with a lot of flexibility, which I think looks good. So moving on, this card I'm having a little bit harder of a time with. This is Lady Deathstrike. She's apparently going to be a 5/3. I think there had been some different numbers on previous datamined versions of this. This one's been in the game for a while. 5/3, and on reveal, destroy each card here with less power than this. And that's less than, not less than or equal to. So it's only hitting 2 power or less stuff at a base level. So, you know, if you're playing against like a zoo deck or whatever, or a C2 deck that has not been buffed yet, then you, or maybe a Silver Surfer deck with broods or something that haven't been buffed yet, you might be able to get like a clean hit against a bunch of broods or C2s or whatever. Yes, opponents as well. Yeah, of course. Each card here, it's not just friendly card here. So, you know, there's some really specific scenarios where this could actually wipe out a lot of your opponent's stuff. Now, that I think is going to be very unreliable, very hard to pull off. Not a reason to run this card at its base level, because that's just not going to... Most stuff's bigger than 2. You know, everything's 3, 4, 5, 8, etc., and she's going to do nothing. You're going to be playing a 5/3. It's like the opposite of Shang-Chi, right? Shang-Chi's killing the big, awesome stuff that you're super excited about. This is killing little stuff you didn't care about anyway. So not good at a base level, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily rule out the card completely. There's other ways to approach this. Somebody just brought one up in chat, like, okay, maybe Mr. Negative deck could be cool with this. It's a 3/5 at that stage, and then that helps get more stuff under it. I still don't actually think that fits that well in a negative deck. Negatives really like zeros in particular, so having room for this might be difficult. And even at 5, there's still a lot of the biggest things you care about kind of scoot by, you know, like they still don't get dealt with, and you still lose because this just didn't kill enough things. So I don't even really think negative's an angle necessarily, but maybe something to consider, maybe something to play around with. Now the other side is buffing it. Like we talked about buffing the dude before. You could also buff this, you know, you could play this with like Shuri beforehand, even though that only pushes it to 6. You could play this with Nakia, Okoye, Forge, you know, whatever it is. There's ways to up the power of this card so that it's more able to destroy more things. But ultimately, I think it's way too hard to scale up fast enough. Again, even pushing it to 5 or 6 or something isn't enough to make a big enough impact, because you're spending 5. You need to get a good return on your investment for Lady Deathstrike. So the other side of this is destroying your own cards. Obviously, you can use this as your own destroy activator and, you know, eat your Bucky Barnes and eat your Nova, and then hopefully also, you know, maybe eat your opponent's Ant-Man and eat your opponent's Iceman. There's not a lot of cards or examples that work very well for this one, so it's a little hard to say. But, you know, theoretically, activate your own stuff and maybe kill a few things of your opponents, and you hope that the net power swing is significant enough, right? Like, okay, I summoned a Bucky, that's +6. I killed 4 power of my opponent's stuff, that's 10. I got 3 here, that's kind of like a 13 power play. Not the best example, because Bucky could be eaten by other things much more affordably and still get you that +6, right? So it's like, if you're activating your own destruction effects, everybody's talking about like goblins and sentries and stuff. Why not just run Carnage, right? Why not just run cards that already eat things far more affordably and flexibly and scale up the stats much better? The only reason you'd run Lady Deathstrike is if you think you're going to get some of your opponent's stuff, because otherwise it's not going to be worth it. You'd rather run cheaper destroy effects, deathlocks, whatever it is. Now, there is some nuance there, because she can slide in between. It's like, I can eat a Bucky without eating a big thing that's next to the Bucky. So, you know, if you've got a big card and a Bucky, she can go in between and eat your Bucky and leave your big guy alive. But again, is it really worth spending 5 energy on that? What kind of deck construction does that look like? You know, you're playing Bucky on 2, a big thing on 4, and then Lady Deathstrike on 5. It's like, well, that doesn't really make sense from like a gameplay standpoint. Why are you doing that? You know, that feels weird. So I just don't know where this card lives in that space. It's so strange. Like, why not just run a cheaper destroy for most of the things we're talking about? If you're using it proactively for your own effects, you have better options. If you're using it to destroy your opponent's stuff, you have better options. Just play more power, probably, usually is going to work better. And then the middle ground, I don't see either. Like where it's combining the two worlds, it still doesn't feel like it does enough to me. So like maybe there's some critical mass of hand buff style cards like the Nakias and the Okoyes and the Forages we talked about. And if you run like Daken and Lady Deathstrike and enough, like you can get there. But Nakia in particular these days with only buffing 2 cards, she used to buff your entire hand, which was pretty cool. I don't see it personally. I think this needs a higher base cost, a higher base power, or a lower base cost to feel like it fits in somewhere. Because for me, this just seems too hard. Sentry turn 4, Lady Deathstrike turn 5. Yeah, but why not Sentry turn 4, Carnage turn 5, or Viper turn 5? You know what I mean? Like, yes, you can obviously construct scenarios where a card is going to function, but it's about the opportunity cost of this card versus other cards in that same position that just do something better, right? Like Carnage is just better in that scenario. Viper is just better in that scenario, whether you're attacking your opponent's power or yours, you know? And on average, this is going to be weaker than other options. So I don't know. I don't see it personally. This looks like way too clunky to me. This looks really bad to me right now. I just think it takes too much help or support to make it good. You know what I mean? Okay, so like Hazmat, okay, another interesting example. I love all these examples, by the way. This is really good. But if you've Hazmatted your opponent's stuff to where it's smaller than 3, like you've already pushed everything down to 2, why not just play a big card and win via stats? You know what I mean? Like why require this weird synergy and support? You've already done the work with Hazmat. It's already all super small. Just win. I don't get it. I don't know. It feels like this just needs a number tweak. I feel like if you tweak a couple numbers here, this card looks really interesting to me. But at this state, I don't see it. I don't know. It's just really clunky. I hope I'm wrong. Let's prove me wrong, right? That's awesome. I want it to get played. So next up here, we got X23. This is a 1/2. Good base stat line. And then reads, when this is discarded or destroyed, so again, that dual synergy, regenerate it at a random location and you get +1 energy next turn. And yeah, I think this looks awesome. We talked earlier about fuel for destroy decks or discard decks. Amazing, right? Just a little energy without really sacrificing much. You get the power out of it because it's regenerating, right? And that means you can actually do it multiple times in destroy decks in particular. So eat it with Carnage, then eat it with Venom, etc. It just keeps bouncing around and giving you multiple energy. So that's great for things like destroyer decks as well, where you want to maybe cheat a destroyer out a turn early, get it down on 5, and then null on turn 6. So there's all kinds of little curve breakpoints. Nimrods as well. If you can get your Nimrod down a turn early, sometimes that can really help you do some cool stuff. So I think this looks like a perfect fuel card for destroy decks. Discard decks, I mean, it's a little clunkier to me in a discard deck. It's not bad by any means because, you know, it's just free energy if you hit this with your, like, Colleen or whatever. Can play your Dracula a turn early or something. That's fine. You know, it's maybe a little more competitive there, though. It might get cut for other things that are just also discard synergies. I'd have to really break down a 12-card list to see if it makes the cut or not. Certainly fine. You could probably see versions that are a hybrid or something, particularly running it. But for destroy, this just looks completely insane. Yeah, great against Killmonger. Yeah, I dare you to Killmonger it, bro. This just looks like an A+ destroy card to me. I actually think this makes destroy a pretty scary deck, which there's already a decent destroy deck floating around right now that's running Electro for ramp to get that destroyer down early a little bit. And then this could be like, this could take it to the next level. You don't even need the downside of an Electro or something. This might just get you there more consistently. So this kind of deck or something very close to it has been floating around this week a lot. You can see this fitting in so well here. Just another thing to eat with Venom and Carnage. Get your double turn 6s down sooner. More stuff for death to activate. Just kind of perfect, really. Is this good in discard or good for only for destroy? That's what I was saying earlier. I don't know. It's discard to me. It's definitely less of a good fit because you can't activate it multiple times. You can only discard it once. So it's not that continuing repeating energy gain. So not as good in discard, but might still be good enough, you know, just a bonus 2 power, a bonus activator in your MODOK. Well, you probably don't want to MODOK this actually, because you don't really do much with 7 energy on the final turn, because you're usually playing like Apocalypse or Chavez. That bonus energy probably doesn't go very far because you only have 1 card in hand typically, or you're saving 1 in hand for Dracula anyway. So maybe more like a Colleen Wing sort of thing, just getting a little bonus acceleration in the early game. So definitely less interesting to me in discard. But Destroy looks, I think, very promising. I think this will absolutely be a huge Destroy card. Good with Deadpool, good with Nimrod, good with basically everything. It's just a good card. Because it regenerates, it doesn't go away. You're not giving up anything when you eat this. You're feeding your Venom, you're feeding your Carnage, and you're still getting it. And you're getting the bonus as well. Like, my God, it's just perfect. It does everything you want it to do. So the final card we've got here, datamined, is Silver Samurai. This guy's a 4/5. With on reveal, each player discards the lowest power card from their hand. So this is actually another potential X23 synergy piece. If this is, you isolate this as your lowest power card, boom, here you go. That's a way to summon an extra 2 and also net the benefit of your opponent losing something hopefully valuable. Keep in mind that may sound like you're discarding your opponent's weakest card, but not always, because some things like Darkhawk, for instance, are 0 power in hand. So you could get rid of like really cool ongoing cards, or maybe their Patriot or Mystique or something is their lowest power card in hand. So there are actually some kind of build around and prime targets that exist, even if it's not based on cost. Sometimes low power cards actually have the highest power effects because they're balancing their high powered effect with their low power. High value effect, let's say that. They're high value effects. So actually pretty nuts. Also adding consistency to Stature. We've already seen Stature Black Bolt as a really strong meta deck that got double nerfed, and I think it's still solid. I think it's still pretty good. And this slots right into that really nicely. That deck already cared about Zabu a little bit, so this is a perfect angle to get rid of even more of your opponent's stuff. So this plus Black Bolt, your opponent might really be hurting for plays in particular, might have a higher chance to disrupt their cool stuff, get something small out of the way for your Black Bolt to hit a next biggest target. It could be a possibility too. So I like this. I also think it's actually maybe fine in just other decks, certain meta reads, or particularly like Conquest mode where there's a lot of Patriot around. I'm going to run Silver Samurai in my Zabu deck just to get a chance to hit those Patriots or Mystiques and stuff. There's a lot of Darkhawk. I'm going to run Silver Samurai to discard their Darkhawk before they can play it on turn 6 sort of stuff. There's a lot of disruption potential here, and I don't think you're sacrificing too much in stats, particularly with Zabu. This is even easier to play than something like Black Bolt, which now Black Bolt is not symmetrical, so you may need a little extra help on this, or may have to construct your deck in a way where you're not sacrificing too much of your own, or maybe just have some additional discard support in there alongside everything else. You're running some swarms or something to support this even further. So I don't know. Not every deck will be willing to sacrifice their own card, much like with Moon Knight. Sometimes it's just too risky. The Stature Black Bolt deck didn't even run Moon Knight. The Black Bolt was enough to make Stature consistent. I think this is more reliable and controllable than Moon Knight because it's not a random card, so you can build your deck in a way where you're running the X23. That's Hearthstone, don't worry. Where you're running the X23 to guarantee it. You're running the Swarm, whatever kind of backup plan to increase consistency here could really help. So pretty cool. I like this one too. I think this card gets some play. Stature Black Bolt might be back again as a really good deck, and that might be part of the reason they weren't shy nerfing that deck multiple ways, because they knew a card like this was eventually going to come down the pipe and make it even better. So what do you guys think? What's the strongest card out of this set? What's going to see the most play? Ruins Mr. Negative? If you could play it before the Mr. Negative, you could actually discard Mr. Negative, yes. But usually if you're playing a 4, your opponent is probably going to be playing their 4 as well because they want to play it ASAP. But certainly some things like that didn't get hit by Mr. Negative, like an Iron Man or a Zola that's 0 power in hands, could definitely get wiped out, which they need sometimes to support the cards that did get negatived later. But like once they flip the Iron Man to 5 or whatever, it's not likely to be hit necessarily. So you guys are all saying X23 is the best. I think that's a pretty fair read. Yeah, she seems to be the most flexible and interesting, and like not the flashiest necessarily, but feels like a core destroy piece. I think Daken also looks pretty good, but doesn't have that like fundamental feeling of X23 where it's like you gotta have X23 in your destroy deck to juice it up. So my ranking would probably be X23 at number 1, Daken at number 2, Silver Samurai at number 3, and Lady Deathstrike, as far as I'm concerned, a distant 4. I have to concoct such specific scenarios for this card to even look halfway decent. And of course, those scenarios don't often appear in game realistically very often. So this is going to need something to come along to support it or do some cheese we're not expecting, I think, to make this even halfway reasonable. This feels like the kind of Shadow King of this batch where he came out and basically did nothing for the longest time. Yeah, nice fingers though. Big sexy salad fingers here. Yeah, I'm gonna hop off. Thank you all for hanging out and talking through these cards with me.